Welcome to the WanderLearn show. I'm your host, Tapon. In this episode, I will be talking with Johnny Ward regarding growing up in Northern Ireland. What are some of the lessons that we can learn from his experience there? It's going to be a brief episode about that. And then in the second half of the episode, you're going to get an audio update from him regarding Mount Everest, where he's at right now. I incorrectly stated last episode that he would be not going to Camp 3. He's actually going to Camp 1, 2, and then tagging Camp 3, having a little snack up there, and then working his way back to base camp tomorrow, if all goes well. So that's the plan, and you'll hear his exclusive update on how things are going on Mount Everest. It's fascinating. You got to listen to it. And now let's turn to Johnny Ward talking about Northern Ireland. And of course, I forgot to mention that you should like and subscribe to this video and podcast and share it with your friends. Go to francistapon.com to learn more. Thanks. Northern Ireland is where you grew up.
Yeah.
You were born in Galway.
Yeah.
Near the Aran Islands, I suppose.
Oh, good research, man.
You grew up probably at the tail end of some of the violence that was going on, the
Yep.
terrorism that was going on, the IRA, and all that stuff. And then you went ahead and traveled to every country in the world. And you probably along the way undoubtedly saw many conflicts that were kind of reminded you of the Ireland UK conflict. What did you kind of learn from, what did the Irish get right, if anything, or the British in that whole situation? And what do you find is like the key thing that a country that has a conflict, let's just take Ukraine and Russia, for example, or any of these conflicted places, there's so many, dozens in the world, that we could learn from your Ireland upbringing?
So, very briefly for people, because a lot of people don't know what happened in Northern Ireland. So, obviously, Ireland used to be one country. The UK colonised it. There was pushback from Ireland, obviously, and then in the end, there was a rough truce about 100 years ago where the UK government said, all right, you can have the bottom half, but you will keep the top half. Do you accept that? And then they accepted it, and that's how Northern Ireland is now still part of the UK, whereas Republic of Ireland is its independent nation. Anyway, and I was born in the south and grew up in the north. And then on a religious basis, which is where all the trouble started, was that Ireland historically has been Catholic and the UK historically has been Protestant. So all under the Christian denomination, but different branches. So in the north, in Northern Ireland then, that was roughly 50-50 Protestant Catholic, where the Protestants all came from the UK originally. When the Brits colonised, they moved a load of Protestants to the north, and the original Irish people were Catholics in the north. So then the Protestants were wealthier and had all the political rights, and the Catholics were downtrodden, oppressed. Anyway, so then the IRA was representing the Catholics, trying to push back against Protestants in the north, and that's still going on to this day, although a lot less violence now. And then there was a period from, let's say, the late 50s until the late 90s called the Troubles, known as the Troubles, and that was Protestants versus Catholics killing each other. Actually, there's thousands of dead. And then when I see things like in Ukraine, people are like, oh, I can't believe this is happening in Europe. I'm like, bro, this happened in my childhood in Europe. You know what I mean?
Right.
But,
and let alone Bosnia, Kosovo. And
yeah, well, they used to call it the three Bs: Baghdad, Belgrade, and Belfast. Which now is laughable, because Belfast is like a cool place. People go and get drunk. St. Patrick's Day, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it used to be pretty shitty back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I was born in 83, so yeah, absolutely, you're right. It was the tail end. But I remember that in my town, there was a bomb when I grew up, like all our windows smashed. I remember one day I was playing sport for my high school in Oma, and there was a big bomb called the Oma bomb that day, and every day growing up, people walking around like with military guns, and you're just used to it. And when I was like 10 or something, I went to visit some family in England with my mum, and I said to my mum, like, why is there no soldiers walking around, Mum? Because that's just what you're used to, you know.
Right.
But now finally it's kind of cleaned up. There's still a political divide in terms of Protestant schools, Protestant sports, Catholic sports, but they're not killing each other.
Why not?
Education, I guess. Immigration actually was a weird one too, because so I'm 38 now, so I left Ireland when I was 18, but those first 20 years growing up, it was a very homogenous society. Like, I only had ever seen a handful of black people in my life. Like, Ireland was just white, basically, white Irish, and white British. And then people, I guess, the tribalism of humanity, we found our own little tribes. Well, I'm Protestant, you're Catholic, So, and then when immigration became more widespread with the EU as well, both initial influx of Eastern Europeans, the EU meant that everyone from every European country could live in each other country. but that basically meant poorer countries came to wealthier countries, and Ireland was quite wealthy. So then we had loads of Polish and Latvians and Lithuanians moved to Ireland, and then I guess that kind of opened people's eyes, that they were like, oh, okay, and there's another religion, and there's other races, and there's other languages. There's a funny quote growing up that was a famous thing in Northern Ireland, that the first wave of immigration, and there was a Muslim who came to Belfast, and he was praying, and a Protestant guy comes up to him and says, like, what are you doing down there in the ground? He's like, I'm praying to Allah. He's like, what does that mean? He's like, I'm a Muslim. He's like, I know, I don't care about that. Are you a Protestant Muslim or are you a Catholic Muslim? So I guess like immigration actually kind of helped, because it made people aware of, like, we were living in this little closed-minded world,
and you had more in common than you realized.
Yeah, that's a better way to say it. Yes, so the Protestants of Ireland and the Catholics of Ireland had actually far more in common than the people coming into the country. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Yeah, but it's a frosty piece. You know what I mean? People still don't integrate as well. But
do they intermarry?
It's wrong to say they don't, but 95% of marriages, or more, probably 98% of marriages, would be within the Catholic faith or within the Protestant faith.
It kind of reminds me of Mauritania, the country that we're in right now. You'll ask Mauritanians, are you guys racist? And it's like, absolutely not. No, there's no racism. It's like, okay, so because Mauritania, for those who don't know, is not half, but there's a lot of blacks and a lot of Arabic looking tan colored people. And I say, well, do you guys intermarry? Like, no, almost never.
And also, I studied my master's degree in Malaysia. And Malaysia is often lauded as a country that's been great for multiculturalism. And for people who don't know, Malaysia is roughly a third Chinese Malay, so Chinese-looking people Malaysian, Indian Malaysians, so fully Indian, and
indigenous Malays.
And indigenous Malays, yeah, who are Muslim Malaysians.
Right.
And it's roughly a third, and they're always shown as a country that, look how well these guys have integrated, and the chances of them intermarrying are zero. even hanging out. Well, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we're tribal at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, and even countries that are promoted as being multicultural, they still live in their own little pockets.
Which is interesting, because you're married to a Thai woman, and I'm married to an African, so we are actually. We did intermarry.
We're trying to break the cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey Francis, how you doing? Johnny here. I'm in base camp. Last day of internet, actually. I'm heading up through the Khumbu Icefall tonight at midnight, and then going to Camp 1, up to Camp 2, and then we'll head up to Camp 3 just to tag it for the altitude training at 7,500 meters or something, and then back down to Camp 2 and 1, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we'll be away for about a week, and I'll be offline for about a week. Good for the soul. I've been at base camp for about a week now, and it's kind of been okay. The operator that I'm climbing with is called Furtenbach Adventures, and they're basically the best in the business. They're a bit more expensive, but with that, you get to be comfortable at base camp, proper food. You get your own tent. There's a lounge tent with a TV, even a real coffee machine. So like Everest is hard enough. That's basically the idea, is that Everest is so brutal, and obviously the risk of dying and the altitude and everything is kind of terrifying. So as comfortable as you can be at base camp to recover and try to stay healthy, it gives you a higher chance of succeeding. So for me, it's definitely better to maybe wait another year and afford to go with a better operator. I see these guys like clambering into their little Walmart tents, and I just feel so sorry for them in the freezing cold. It was like -20 last night. And I normally, over my mountaineering history, I've been going with the cheapest operators, obviously to save money. And every time I was at base camp, I'd be like slumming it and watching people in their comfortable tents. And on other mountains, when you don't die, it's kind of okay, of course. Like, you just suffer a bit for a few weeks in your expedition, but ultimately, hopefully you'll reach the summit and the outcome's the same. But with Everest, with the risk and obviously the expense, I think it's better just to make sure that you're with the best team you can be with, and hopefully you'll only have to do it once. So yeah, base camp's been good. Freezing, of course, but I've managed to have a bit of internet. I've still got to pay the bills, so I'm working on my laptop 2 or 3 hours a day as we're acclimatizing. But shit's going to get real tonight as we go through the Khumbu Icefall all night with the head torches, so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, mate, nice to hear from you. Like I say, I'll be offline for a week, so maybe I'll send you another message if I can when I get back online after we come down from this rotation. All the best, mate. Good luck. Bye-bye.